$200 billion. That is what we spend every year on fertilizers, pesticides, and chemical miracles. We've been sold a story that growth is a transaction, that if you pay enough, nature will comply. But in the 1950s, a botanist named Dr. T.C. Singh discovered a glitch in the system. He made plants grow 72% faster and 20% taller using nothing but sound. The catch? His hack cost exactly $0. It didn't just break the rules of biology, it threatened an entire industry. We've been taught to treat our gardens like simple machines. Add nitrogen, add phosphorus, get output. Every manual, every expert, every neighbor repeats the same ritual. But in all these routines, we've ignored the one thing life on Earth has relied on for millions of years: resonance. A garden in silence is an evolutionary vacuum. Think about it. Plants didn't evolve in a sterile lab. They grew up in a world of constant vibration. The low hum of insects, the morning chorus of birds, the specific frequency of a distant storm. To a plant, silence isn't peaceful. It's a signal that the ecosystem is dead. When we put a plant in a quiet greenhouse or a still kitchen window, we are effectively putting it in sensory deprivation. It isn't just quiet, it's empty. Agricultural science treats the leaf like a solar panel and the root like a straw. But science is finally catching up to what Singh knew decades ago. High-frequency sound waves actually stimulate the stomata, the tiny pores on a leaf, to stay open longer, allowing the plant to breathe in more CO2 and accelerate its metabolism. If you want to break the cycle of chemical dependency, you need to restore the environment the plant actually expects. Here is the protocol for a resonant garden first timing. Play sound for 30 minutes at dawn. This mimics the natural peak of bird activity when the plant is most receptive. Second, the frequency. Use Indian classical music, specifically the flute or violin, or high-frequency nature sounds between 3,000 and 5,000 hertz. This isn't about loving the music, it's about the physical vibration hitting the cell walls. Third, volume. Keep it gentle. You aren't trying to blast the plants, you are trying to bathe them in a consistent wave. We have spent decades looking for the secret to life in a bottle, ignoring the fact that the answer has been waiting just out of earshot. The silence in our fields isn't natural. It's a human invention, and it's time we let the garden hear the world again. If you're ready to look past the textbooks and see nature for what it actually is, hit subscribe. Let's rediscover the truths they tried to bury. Every year, the global agricultural industry pours $200 billion into a chemical arms race. We've been taught that growth is a product of what we add to the soil: powders, pellets, and patented serums. But we've forgotten the most ancient input of all. A garden in silence is a garden missing half its story. In the 1960s, Dr. T.C. Singh, a botanist at Annamalai University, decided to treat plants not as simple machines but as listeners. He filled his greenhouses with the soaring notes of classical Indian violins. To the scientific establishment, it was a fantasy. To the plants, it was a wake-up call. The data was impossible to ignore. Singh's plants grew 20% taller than their silent neighbors. Their biomass, the literal weight of their life force, surged by 72%. In the rice paddies fields washed in melody, yielded 60% more grain. No fertilizer bill. No toxic runoff. Just resonance. Singh discovered that plants have evolved in a world of constant vibration. Yet modern agriculture has forced them into an evolutionary vacuum. We provide the water, but we've removed the rhythm. The catch: his hack cost exactly $0. It was a discovery that threatened a billion-dollar empire because you cannot patent a frequency. But numbers alone weren't enough to change the world. That required a darker catalyst. Enter Dan Carlson. In the 1950s, Carlson wasn't a scientist. He was a soldier on a dirt road in Korea, witnessing the raw mechanics of survival. He watched a village where food aid was a lottery of desperation. He watched a mother driven by a love so fierce, it became a horror place her child's legs beneath the wheels of an army truck, because only the injured were fed. The sound of breaking bones and the silence that followed haunted Carlson for 15 years. It became his obsession to find a way to grow food so abundant that no mother would ever have to make that choice again. He returned to Singh's research, refining it into a specific protocol that anyone can use today. If you want to break the silence of your own garden, here is the frequency. First, focus on the birdsong window. Plants have stomata, tiny pores that act like lungs. Carlson found that frequencies between 3,000 and 5,000 hertz, similar to a dawn chorus, trigger these pores to open wider, allowing the plant to breathe in more nutrients. Second, timing is everything. Play these frequencies for just 30 minutes in the early morning when the air is heavy with dew. Third, consistency over volume. It's not about blasting noise, it's about a gentle rhythmic resonance that mimics the natural world we've paved over. We have spent a century trying to force nature to submit to our chemistry. We've built fortresses of glass and steel, yet we wonder why our harvests feel empty. Dan Carlson and Dr. Singh showed us that the solution isn't waiting in a lab. It's waiting just out of earshot in the air, in the vibration of a string. Nature is listening. The question is, are you ready to play? The global fertilizer industry is a $200 billion empire built on chemicals. But in 1979, a man in a Minnesota living room proved that the greatest growth stimulant on Earth doesn't come in a bag. It's free, it's invisible, and it sounds like a bird. His name was Dan Carlson. Decades earlier, as a young man in the Korean War, Carlson witnessed a hunger so profound it changed him. He saw parents forced into impossible choices just to keep their children alive. He didn't see a political crisis. He saw a biological failure. He made a vow to find a way to grow food that didn't require an industrial complex. He spent years buried in botanical journals searching for a bypass to the limits of nature. He wasn't looking for a miracle chemical. He was looking for a frequency. His proof was a single purple passion vine. This species is supposed to grow 18 inches. That's the biological ceiling. But Carlson's vine didn't stop. It climbed the walls. It circled the ceiling. It stretched through the windows and back again. When the Guinness Book of World Records arrived, they measured it at over 1,300 feet. That is 4 times the length of a football field. From an 18-inch houseplant. Carlson hadn't changed the soil, he had changed the atmosphere. He discovered that plants aren't just simple machines, they are listening. For millions of years, the dawn chorus of birds signaled the start of the day. Evolution taught plants that when the birds sing, it's time to eat. High-frequency sound waves, specifically between 3,000 and 5,000 hertz, trigger a biological reflex. The stomata, the tiny pores on the leaves, swing wide open. They breathe. They prepare to absorb. When Carlson combined these frequencies with a gentle mist of nutrients, the results were impossible. Strawberries tripled their yield. Fields that were once barren transformed in a single season. This is the sonic bloom protocol. First, timing. The sound must be played at dawn when the plant's internal clock is most responsive. Second, frequency. A steady oscillation of 5,000 hertz, mimicking the sharp piercing trill of songbirds. Third, foliar feeding. While the stomata are forced open by the resonance, you apply a nutrient-rich mist. The plant doesn't just grow, it feasted. A garden in silence is a garden missing half its story. We have treated agriculture like a chemical war, forgetting that life is a symphony of vibrations. Dan Carlson didn't just break a world record in his living room. He found a way to bridge the gap between human hunger and nature's hidden abundance. The answers we've been spending billions to find have been waiting just out of earshot all along. Every year, the agricultural industry spends over $200 billion on chemical fertilizers. We've been conditioned to treat plants like simple, silent machines. But what if the most powerful growth stimulant on Earth costs exactly $0? The evidence has been rooting itself in plain sight long before the textbooks could keep up. Inside a soundproof laboratory at Tel Aviv University, the silence was shattered. Researchers placed tomato and tobacco plants in isolated boxes, positioning ultrasonic microphones just centimeters away. Then they did the unthinkable. They stopped watering them. They snipped their leaves. What happened next changed biology forever. The microphones recorded a frantic burst of ultrasonic clicks, 40 to 80 kilohertz. To us, the garden was still. But in the ultrasonic spectrum, the plants were screaming. This wasn't random noise. Sophisticated algorithms revealed a hidden Morse code. A dehydration click has a different rhythm than a physical injury. Even in a crowded, noisy greenhouse, the plants were broadcasting their specific distress into the air. They were talking. But more importantly, they were listening. In another study, researchers exposed evening primrose flowers to the low-frequency hum of a bee's wings. Within 3 minutes, just 3, the sugar content in their nectar spiked by 20%. When scientists removed the petals, the effect vanished. The petals aren't just ornaments. They are miniature eardrums vibrating in resonance with the world. Without them, the plant goes deaf. The sweetness disappears. We have lived in an evolutionary vacuum, ignoring the acoustic reality of nature. But you can bridge this gap in your own garden. Here is the protocol for the silent harvest. First, the frequency. Aim for the range between 100 and 5,000 hertz. This mimics the natural vibrations of wind and pollinators, signaling the plant's stomata to open wider for nutrient absorption. Second, the timing. Plants are most metabolically active in the early morning. A 30-minute session of acoustic stimulation at dawn is more effective than 6 hours at noon. Third, the source. Research shows that complex high-frequency sounds like birdsong or Indian classical ragas yield the highest increase in biomass. We've spent decades talking at our plants, drowning them in chemicals and silence. It is time we started listening. Because a garden without sound is a garden missing half its story. Next time you walk through a field, remember, just because you can't hear the conversation doesn't mean it isn't happening. The question is, are you tuned in? The global fertilizer industry is a $200 billion empire. Every manual, every expert, and every industrial farm treats plants like simple machines. Feed them nitrogen, give them water, and expect a result. But we've forgotten something vital. We have been growing our food in an evolutionary vacuum. A garden in silence is a garden missing half its story. In the outskirts of Beijing, a quiet rebellion took place. Scientists divided a cucumber farm into 2 identical zones. Same soil, same seeds, same sunlight. But in the sonic block, they installed speakers. For just a few hours every morning, they bathed the crops in a specific frequency between 3,000 and 5,000 hertz. This isn't random noise. It is the exact pitch of the dawn chorus, the sound of birds that has signaled the start of the day for millions of years. The results didn't just challenge the textbooks, they shattered them. The cucumbers exposed to sound produced 37% more fruit. They weren't just larger, they were more abundant. The leaves grew broader, the stems thickened. The roots pushed deeper into the earth as if the plants were reaching out toward the source of the music. The catch, this hack cost $0 in chemicals. No genetic modification, no expensive runoff, just resonance. If you want to replicate what the industry is ignoring, here is the sonic protocol. First, target the frequency range of 3 to 5 kilohertz. This is the sweet spot that triggers the stomata, the plant's pores, to open wider. Second, timing is everything. Play these frequencies only during the first 2 to 3 hours of sunrise. This is when the plant is naturally primed to breathe. Third, keep the volume moderate. You are not trying to blast the cells, you are trying to whisper to them. Modern agriculture is loud with the sound of machinery, yet the fields themselves are empty. We've traded biological wisdom for chemical dependency. But as the data from these fields proves, nature isn't waiting for a new patent or a more expensive spray. It is simply waiting, just out of earshot. The truth is, the plants have been listening all along. We just stopped talking to them. Imagine a technology that increases crop yields by 300%, doubles the nutrient density of your food, and costs exactly $0. You won't find it in a glossy catalog. You won't see it subsidized by the government. In fact, for the last 50 years, the billion-dollar agricultural industry has tried to make sure you never hear about it at all. Because in a world built on recurring invoices, a free solution is a declaration of war. In 1973, a researcher named Dorothy Retalak published a study that should have rewritten every biology textbook on Earth. Her findings were simple: plants are not machines, they are listeners. Under the influence of Bach and classical Indian sitars, her plants didn't just grow, they thrived, leaning toward the speakers with lush leaves and massive root systems. But when exposed to the jagged, percussive chaos of hard rock, they wilted, stunted, and broken, as if trying to crawl away from the noise. She logged the data, she mapped the biomass, and then the world turned on her. The response wasn't a scientific debate, it was an execution. Headlines mocked her. Late-night hosts turned her life's work into a punchline. The label pseudoscience was applied like a brand designed to burn. Grants vanished. Her colleagues retreated into the safety of silence. As one researcher later put it, "It is murder when I apply for grants in this field." But look at the timing. While Retalak's career was being dismantled, the global fertilizer market was exploding. Today, that industry is worth $200 billion, propped up by another $50 billion in annual government subsidies. It's a system designed for dependency. You buy the seeds, you buy the chemicals, you buy the cure for the damage the chemicals caused. It's an endless loop of consumption. Sound, by contrast, requires nothing but a frequency, no patents, no supply chains, no recurring sales. You cannot build an empire on a breeze. For 5 decades, plant acoustics was erased, stuck in an evolutionary vacuum. But the biology doesn't care about the economics. Evolutionarily, plants evolved in a world of constant sonic feedback, the hum of bees, the rustle of leaves, the specific frequencies of a healthy ecosystem. Modern industrial farms aren't just quiet, they are empty. They are missing the very signals that tell a plant to open up. Here is the core protocol, the sonic bloom method that survived the purge. First, timing is everything. You play specific high-frequency sounds similar to a bird's chirp during the early morning hours when the dew is still on the leaves. Second, the biological hack: these frequencies trigger the stomata, the tiny pores on the leaf, to dilate far beyond their normal state. Third, while the plant is in this hyper-receptive mode, you apply organic nutrients. Because the doors are wide open, the plant absorbs the nutrition with 300% more efficiency than usual. You are essentially whispering to the plant's defense system to stand down, allowing it to feast. A garden in silence is a garden missing half its story. We have treated our fields like simple machines for a century, washing them in chemicals while ignoring the resonance that actually drives life. The data is real. The results are undeniable. The only thing standing in the way is a $200 billion industry that benefits from your silence. Maybe it's time we started listening again. The global agricultural industry is a $200 billion fortress built on chemicals. We've been taught that growth comes from a bottle, a pellet, or a laboratory. But while the empire of fertilizers expands, a suppressed truth remains hidden in the air around us. The catch: this breakthrough costs exactly $0. Every manual, every expert, every neighbor will tell you that plants are silent, passive machines. They are wrong. A garden in silence is a garden missing half its story. In the 1960s, botanist Dr. T.C. Singh discovered something that challenged the very foundation of biology. He found that plants aren't just biological engines, they are listeners. This isn't mysticism, it's evolutionary resonance. For millions of years, plants evolved alongside the dawn chorus of birds. They learned to recognize specific frequencies as a signal that the day had begun and it was time to eat. Dan Carlson took this further. Using electron micrographs, he captured the impossible stomata, the tiny microscopic mouths on the surface of every leaf stretching wide in response to sound. When these mouths are open, the plant's ability to absorb nutrients spikes. We're talking about a 700% increase in efficiency. A simple foliar spray, which would normally sit idle on the leaf's surface, is suddenly inhaled. Carlson's lab didn't just see growth, they saw a biological revolution. Biomass doubled, harvesting times plummeted. And it all happened because of a frequency that matches the morning bird song. If you want to replicate this, you don't need a lab. You need the protocol. Here is the exact method. Set your frequency between 3,000 and 5,000 hertz. This is the sweet spot that mimics the evolutionary vacuum of the dawn chorus. Play this for 1 to 3 hours, no more ideally before 10 a.m. while the dew is still present. Keep the volume between 70 and 80 decibels, roughly the level of a normal conversation. Place your speakers within 10 feet of your plants. But remember, precision is survival. In this realm, more is not better. Extending the sound beyond 3 hours or pushing the volume above 80 decibels creates stress. Studies published in journals like Cell confirm that 8 hours of continuous sound leads to cellular collapse. You are looking for resonance, not an assault. This isn't just theory. In the hills of Tuscany, at the Il Paradiso di Frasina vineyard, Mozart plays to the grapes 24 hours a day. The result: massive fruit, 0 pests, and 0 pesticides. Even Bose stepped in to donate the sound system after witnessing the transformation. The data might be anecdotal to some, but the visual evidence from row to row is undeniable. We are currently trapped in an expensive cycle of soil damage and rising food costs. Yet the tools to break that cycle are already in your pocket. The science is public. The method is simple. The silence we've maintained in our fields is now a choice. Sometimes the answer doesn't require a new invention. It only requires the courage to listen. What happens when we stop treating nature like a machine and start treating it like a symphony? Leave your thoughts below and let the discussion grow.